that. People are on time.
Yeah, so I sent an email.
I see your message.
Starting in a few minutes. Okay.
Okay, awesome.
Oops,
Oh,
except I said.
Get the chat going. We'll be starting in a few meetings.
I know.
Minutes.
I'm gonna fix it.
Good job.
Okay. All right. Well, let me just check one more here. You see the pre-care agreement?
Yes.
Yes.
And then can you switch between that and your presentation?
Yeah, the thing about the presentation.
Oh yeah, there's the tree list. I see
the
that.
thing about the presentation, Robin, is if it's in slideshow, then every time I click it, it advances the slide. So I'm gonna go through the slideshow completely before sharing my another screen.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you. I actually needed to realize that.
Okay, and then you want to put it in presentation mode, which it wasn't in.
Oh, well, where you mean the slideshow?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So 29.
Okay, so Stephen, are you good? Should I put up the
Why don't you put up your slides?
Screen? Yes, okay. Oops. Sorry.
Okay,
Nice
so I
artwork.
go ahead and admit everybody?
Sure.
Nice
Okay.
artwork, Martha.
Here we go.
Oh, thank you. Good. It's clip art.
So we'll be starting in a few minutes. Still waiting for a few people to join. So we'll be starting in a few minutes. There's still a few people joining. So Martha, do you want to go ahead and start?
Yeah.
It's 1:30.
Yeah, great. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I am Martha Jackson from the El Cerrito Garden Club, and we are so glad to be co-hosting this fun event with Stephen Prée, the city arborist, and the Urban Forest Committee. I hope that we'll have some interesting things for you all today. And Robin, do you want to give some housekeeping tips now?
Sure. So just because we're going to have quite a few people, I think 40 people signed up. Maybe not everyone will show up, but so everyone should mute your microphone so that we don't have any background noise. And then we do want questions. Stephen will answer questions. So type your questions or comments into the chat box anytime. There's a little chat icon. You should be able to find that in your Zoom controls. And just, be respectful in your comments when you're chatting. And we are recording it. So if you are worried about your privacy, you can always turn off your video camera. And I think that's it.
Good. Okay. Well, just first, a tiny bit of background about the El Cerrito Garden Club and Arbor Day. The El Cerrito Garden Club has been a thriving club in the community since the 1950s. And even before that was a sort of more informal group, going back, I think, to the 30s. But since 1956, we've been a nonprofit in El Cerrito that welcomes all members. Anyone can join us. We, in normal times, meet once a month at the community center. And we've actually, during the pandemic, been really active on Zoom with Zoom meetings, and anyone is welcome to join us. We have a variety of programs and plant sales and educational things. We try to support the love of gardening and also civic beautification and conservation and preservation of the natural world. Those are some of our goals. And since 1970 or the 70s, the club has supported El Cerrito in its Arbor Day festivities and celebrations. And oh, I just have some pretty slides for you here. You know, El Cerrito has had a great Arbor Day program for a long time. And our contribution usually has been a donation and then a tree planting event with people from the city as well as school children planting in one of the parks. And I found a few of our archived photos. This one of an Arbor Day planting in Harding Park with I see our garden club member Bonnie McKenzie, I think, in the background there. And this one was at Cerrito Vista Park. And here Stephen is showing the kids how to handle the trees. And you can see all these budding gardeners. So the school children get really involved in these events. And then the parks benefit, of course, with these new trees. So we feel very happy about that connection that we've had, and are thrilled to be co-sponsoring today's event. So Arbor Day, just a tiny bit of history for those who might not know, was first started in the 1870s in the state of Nebraska. And pioneers that moved to Nebraska saw that there were not very many trees in the state, and they really wanted to have more of the feeling that they had from the East Coast or from England or the other countries that they had moved from. And they started to think that they needed more trees. And so in 1872 was the first formal Arbor Day in Nebraska, and over 1 million trees were planted at that celebration. I can't quite picture how that could have been with the relatively small population that the state probably had then, but a pretty good response. And then gradually other states also developed Arbor Day celebrations. But it was not until 1907 that President Teddy Roosevelt got involved. And he made this wonderful proclamation to the school children of the United States, saying, "It is well that you should celebrate your Arbor Day thoughtfully, for within your lifetimes, the nation's need of trees will become serious. We of an older generation can get along with what we have, though with growing hardship. But in your full manhood and womanhood, you will want what nature once so bountifully supplied and man so thoughtlessly destroyed." I'm getting kind of teary because that was 1907. Anyway, then in 1970, with the creation of Earth Day and many other conservation movements, Nixon made Arbor Day a federal holiday, and it's celebrated at different times, different dates for different states. And so for California, it's March 7th through March 14th. We have the full week to celebrate. And I will just stop my little bit here by sharing this Gary Snyder poem, which I think is very apropos for today. Gold green. Let it be on a day in March, California, when the grass is green on the rolling hills and the snow is deep in the mountains. Let it be on a day like this that we plant a tree, California, for the years to come, for the little ones, and the lakes will be pure in the mountains. Let it be gold and green, California, that we touch the ground, that we heal the land from the mountains to the sea. Gary Snyder. So thank you for letting me share that. And let me stop sharing my screen and we'll get to the real part of the meeting. So Mary Torusio is the chairperson of the Urban Forest Committee. And that is an appropriate position for her with a lifelong love of trees and a fantastic Instagram account called El Cerrito Trees, full of fantastic photos. And so Mary, I'm going to turn this over to Mary to talk a little bit about the Urban Forest Committee and how it corresponds with the city's Arbor program. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you, Martha. As Martha said, my name is Mary Torusio, and I am the chair of the El Cerrito Urban Forest Committee, which is a group of El Cerrito residents who love trees and work to promote a healthy urban forest within the city. We serve in an advisory capacity to the City Council on tree-related issues, and we are also an informational and educational resource for residents within the city, whether it's about general tree-related issues, general benefits of trees, tree care maintenance, tree care generalities, as I said, or things specific to the city. Where can you plant? What trees can you plant? Who can plant what? Who can prune? Who can maintain? Who can remove trees? All of these practical issues in a city, we serve as an informational resource. We also like to get out there and get our hands dirty, be part of the community. We have tree plantings. We work with the schools, other community groups on educational programming. And lately we've been focusing on sort of fire mitigation in El Cerrito as related to trees. So we've shifted some of our focus on planting to more focus on clearing stuff, debris from natural areas in El Cerrito, kind of trying to reduce fire hazards for the city as related to trees. If you love trees and you want to be a part of the community, we're always looking for new members. Please join the Urban Forest Committee. We would love to have you. We meet at the second Monday of every month. We've been meeting virtually for almost a year now, but hopefully we'll get to meet again in person sometime soon. You can find more information about that on the city's website under the section Boards, Commissions, Committees. You can get information about the application process as well as our committee specifically. Again, we'd love to have you. Martha mentioned our Instagram account, El Cerrito Trees, where we feature local trees. Please follow us if you want to see local trees. And we also provide information about tree-related events, community events relevant to the urban forest. I am so happy to introduce our city staff liaison, Stephen Prée. He is the City of El Cerrito's environmental programs manager, and he's been with the city since 2011. He is also the official El Cerrito arborist, which is why you're here, a wealth of information. And I haven't even been in the city a decade, but just for the 6 or 7 years I've been here, the amount of work Stephen has done for the city in just my perspective is amazing. The amount of trees he's planted, the amount of community outreach he's done, the amount of fire mitigation he's done, and not to mention the water program. He is a great asset to the city, a great asset to us, and I am very happy to hear what he has to say today. So I will hand it over to him. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Mary and Martha. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming. It's a beautiful day. We've had a little bit of rain. We're having some more rain. This is all good, considering we're in probably a drought, but we're not here to talk about the weather. Thanks again for coming. You know, I'd like to just add another couple of tidbits about Arbor Day and Arbor Week in California. You know, Arbor Day is celebrated all around the world. Every country, I believe, or I can't believe how many countries I've come across where I, on a particular day where I see that it's Arbor Day in someplace in another continent. And the first Arbor Day that I'm aware of was in 1594 in the Spanish village of Mondanendo, and I probably pronounced that wrong. But, and as Martha said, then it was carried on by Morton in 1872 in this country. And it really has provided for a long tradition that's grown. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that. You know, the Arbor Day Foundation was established basically through Morton's work. And the Arbor Day Foundation is who has established the Tree City USA designation since 1976. So I'm about to share my screen with you. And I'm going to run through a slide presentation here. So this is me. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about, you know, what is a certified arborist? What is Tree City USA? The city of El Cerrito's relatively recent public tree and shrub ordinance. Some ideas about planting, pruning, or removing city trees and some of the ordinances that are involved with that. And then I'd like to take your questions and see how well I can answer them. You know, I've been in this business of plants since, well, for a long time, over 40 years. And I've made a living in horticulture, in greenhouses and landscape horticulture and nursery work and landscape design, and had a great education at Ohio State University in the ornamental horticulture department there. I've lived in a few different parts of the country, lived in New England for a while. I've lived in California, in the Bay Area, since 1994. It wasn't really until, I always kind of thought about pruning, having done so much pruning in my life, small plants, large trees, prune. I never really considered a certification until I came to know the International Society of Arboriculture's certification as an arborist. And I've come to respect this so much. I can't believe I waited so long before becoming certified in 2008. This is a really necessary qualification for anybody to work on trees who, if you want some confidence of having someone to work on, perform work on trees, this is really a critical, it's kind of really the first step in certification to assure that your trees are being cared for in a way that will sustain them and add to their longevity. There are a lot of mistakes that people make with pruning and different excavation around the root area. So I just want to tell you that the International Society of Arboriculture and the American National Standards Institute has developed this program. It requires passage of an exam and then renewal of continuing education credits every 2 years to maintain certification. And if you have a tree that you care about, as the city cares about its city trees, it is imperative that the work be performed on this tree by a certified arborist. What is Tree City USA? Well, Martha mentioned the first Earth Day and Arbor Day, and recognition of the importance of our ecology for a sustainable planet. The Tree City USA grew out of the Arbor Day Foundation, as I mentioned earlier, and it's essentially allows a city to demonstrate its commitment to caring for the importance of the urban forest. There are many communities around the country. There are 4 that are part of this. We're now in our 2nd year. The city of Belmont in the South Bay has been a Tree City USA for 34 years. There are gradations of Tree City USA, excuse me. One can participate more and more. And what it demonstrates to public grant funders and the public is that the city is serious about caring for and sustaining their urban forest. The city updated its previous tree ordinance in 2019 in order to clarify what qualifies as a public tree, to clarify responsibilities for public tree care, to protect public trees, to provide for some liability for damage to public trees, and to become a Tree City USA. Through the Urban Forest Committee committed to developing to becoming a Tree City USA and to refining the ordinance back in 2016. And then in June of 2019, the city passed the ordinance. The former ordinance just made some basic, had some basic definitions, but this ordinance really provides for more clear definitions in order to avoid things like this real life photograph of somebody who had climbed a tree and cut off the top these city trees. They could have hurt themselves, they could have hurt other people, but perhaps more importantly, now they've topped this tree, and tree topping is not an accepted practice. It makes a more dangerous situation out of a tree. So the emphasis obviously is on the protection and long-term management of public trees, and it defines some of the elements of the city's tree program. And the idea is to eliminate poor tree care. So we have maintenance standards and protection of public trees. We provide for a protected root zone where there's no excavation permitted within so many feet of the tree, and that's defined in the ordinance. You know, that critical root zone is very important to the tree. And again, this only applies to public trees. We're not regulating private trees. The city was very clear on that. But we do want to protect our public trees. We have allowed us to come up with some standard operating procedures that allow us to revisit these if they need to be updated, et cetera. So this is how do we prioritize our city tree work, particularly in a difficult budgetary environment. And it's imperative that obviously we look out for the public safety. And really, trees are a public safety issue. The proper maintenance of trees along our public right-of-ways, particularly the major thoroughfares and corridors, as well as our parks and our other streets. This is really public safety and a necessary expenditure to provide for the safety of these trees. Improper pruning can make a tree, it can render an otherwise healthy tree to be a safety hazard. So it allows us to, the standard operating procedures helps us process the tree planting and pruning and maintenance requests. And it also allows for the private planting, pruning, or removal of a public tree, providing it's done with a permit. So if you were to remove a public tree, there's going to be some mitigation required, some new planting required to offset the loss of that tree. Just remember, there's a lot of carbon stored in these trees, particularly these old trees. A very important quality that these trees are performing for us. As somebody said, you could not buy the benefits that trees provide. A single tree, a mature tree, a group of trees provides so many benefits. It's countless. And stormwater, sinking of stormwater, preventing runoff, providing oxygen, cleaning the air, sequestering carbon. I attended a virtual Tree City USA meeting a couple of weeks ago for an hour and listened to, there's a fellow organization down in at Moffett Field who have planted trees. This is a Superfund site. They've planted trees to essentially mop up the pollutants that are in the ground. And this is a very serious effort to try to sequester, to remove the pollutants from the ground there. I think that really we don't know everything, that all of the benefits that we get from trees, but we do know scientifically students perform better when they have green around them. Hospital patients heal faster when they have a view of trees and greenery. And there's less recidivism in prison populations if they have exposure to trees. Well, gosh, and we're just still talking about the ordinance, sorry. Anyway, this ordinance that we revised, it's consistent with all kinds of city policies. Probably the most relevant city policy and effort that the city council and the city government undertook as far as trees go, public trees go, was the Urban Forest Management Plan in 2007, which actually called for the establishment of a tree department or a urban forestry professional such as myself, and called for the establishment of the Urban Forest Committee. This also led to the Climate Action Plan, which was fostered by our dearly missed former colleague Maria Sanders, who has recently passed. Many plans here that are really help make El Cerrito great. We received public feedback and concerns about the public tree ordinance. Why weren't we protecting heritage trees on private property? Why weren't we prohibiting certain species from being planted? And really, the scope of this ordinance really was to focus on the public trees, and that's what we did. So with the adoption of that ordinance, in 2019. We were then able to apply for the Tree City USA designation. And we earned that qualification in January 2020. And then just this last, just in this past January, we are achieved our second year. I missed one thing, and that is the 4 requirements of the Tree City USA designation, and that is that you have a tree board, that that a city has a tree board or a urban forestry professional, that the city has an ordinance that that protects trees, that the city spends at least $2 per capita for its urban forestry program, and that the city celebrates Arbor Day. And in this case, it's Arbor Week. And I welcome you and thank you for coming. At this time, I will take your questions.
Oh, Stephen, thank you. That was so great to hear all that information. And I didn't know all that history of the ordinance and everything. So that was really interesting. As Robin said earlier, please put your questions in the chat. Because there's quite a few people here. It'll be a little unwieldy, I think, if we try to call on people. And Stephen, I already have 4 questions, so may I start with those? Judith asks, she says she has 3 red buds planted by the city in her front strip. And even though the trunks are only a few inches thick, there are cracks in the sidewalk coming from one, and also another one has a low hanging branch. And she wonders if what she needs to do to have someone come and look at those 2 problems. She says that you came and pruned a few years ago, but now these 2 problems have cropped up.
Well, thanks for that question. As with any city tree issue or maintenance issue, sidewalks or trees, it is the place to go is to call the maintenance division or to send an email and make a request. And that is how we line this work out for response. So my last slide will show that information. But for now, I think I'm just going to keep it on this question and answer. But all that information is contained in the last slide, which I will be sharing shortly.
Great. Okay. And the second one is from Mayana. I hope I'm getting your name right. She says, how to go about adding a street tree? What is the city's involvement? Does she need a permit to dig up the cement? And does the city help at all with that?
Well, great. I am about to show you what we call the city right-of-way. And let's see. So there's the city council. That was not really what I was looking for. We're gonna go back to, sorry about that. I was going to show you what the public right-of-way. The simple answer for that is that that the public right-of-way is this area between the sidewalk, generally speaking. It's between the sidewalk and the, here we go. Okay, let's see. I'm going to share my screen now. Do you see the public right-of-way here? Is this visible to you? I
Yes.
cannot see my own screen, so I'm going to be asking questions like that. So the public right-of-way generally extends from the center of the street into this area where the sidewalk is. And this is a public right-of-way, could house any number of different public utilities. But it's essentially, it's a public right of way that it requires a permit from the city for you to do any work there, any paving work, any tree planting. You're welcome to do any some herbaceous planting, planting, small plants. There are certain guidelines on the visibility, though. If you're on a corner lot, for example, we need to assure that there's site clearance for the vehicular site clearance around the corner. So yes, a permit is needed to plant a tree. Yes, the city may help you with the concrete removal. We do have a program. We have that built into our fee schedule, and we do it on a regular basis. Right now, we have just completed, we're done with the 2021 tree planting, but in our next year's budget, hopefully we'll have money to continue to plant trees unless we get a grant to do more. But otherwise, there has been historically, there's been some money built into the tree budget to help with the removal of concrete and the planting of trees. It doesn't mean that it's free. What it does mean is that you don't pay the full cost. You pay a portion of the cost. And what's required of that is that you complete the tree care agreement. And this tree care agreement, you're signing on to this. You're saying you're going to water the tree and weed the tree for the first 3 years. And you put a deposit down, and the city then comes out after 3 years. You schedule an inspection, and if that tree is healthy and well, then you are eligible to have that deposit refunded. You can see down here, there's a cost for the removal of concrete. Now, I will say that some sites are more conducive to street tree planting than others. And there are several people who would like a street tree the public right-of-way in front of their house is just too small to accommodate. So I would encourage you, if you want a street tree, to contact the maintenance division, and I'll contact you and we'll find out more about your property. The best thing to do is to send an email and to include your address and how many trees you're hoping to put in. So I hope that answered your question.
Great, Stephen. She had a follow-up line that said, and would the city help choosing a tree that won't cause trouble with roots? And I'm sure that's all part of your helping with the type of tree.
Well, in fact, after we're gone, with any luck, those trees are still going to be there. And the urban forest management plan has actually identified the fact that different trees kind of mark a neighborhood. So we try to maintain a theme. And the theme is also dictated by the overhead utility wires, the width of the public right-of-way in the planting location. There are a number of different factors, including the view shed. So generally, we aren't going to put a huge tree in an area where, in the public right-of-way, where it's going to impede on a lot of people's views. That's been a big issue in El Cerrito that we historically, that we want to respect. So we are very specific. Unlike Berkeley, we don't say it's this tree or no tree. Berkeley doesn't give you a choice about what tree you're going to plant, but the city might only give you a choice of 3. We try to work with you, but it's very specific about the site. I can't tell you how many problems, and this is what inspired the ordinance revision, was the fact that we have so many trees that were planted on top of water mains, on top of sewer mains, that were in a large tree in a small space. The sidewalk is bulging. is a trip hazard. Just any number of different scenarios, as you can imagine, problematic scenarios, as you can imagine, that would prompt the city to say, this is where the tree goes, and these are only the very few trees that you can put in this place.
Great. Okay, so now we have a question not about a street tree, but about a backyard tree. I hope you can answer that. Thad asks about putting a Chinese magnolia or a tulip magnolia in his eastern facing backyard. They seem to do well in El Cerrito, he says, but he wonders if you think there are any concerns or particular needs of that tree. If their root systems are deep, do they disrupt sewer pipes or his patio? Any other problems about that? And also, if there's some other tree option you can think of that would have pretty flowers but no fruit, because he's had trouble with rats with a fruit tree before.
Well, Thad, this is the place to ask that question, because the city doesn't do private trees on any other occasion. But because it is Arbor Day and Arbor Week, and this is Ask the Arborist, I will do my best to address that, not knowing which specific magnolia species you're referring to. I will say in general that magnolia are a shallow-rooted genus, and that if you're concerned about surface roots, magnolia is not the plant to put in. I'll also say that while magnolia, gorgeous, beautiful, it's, one of the very first flowering trees, as far as evolution goes. Magnolias are ancient, but there are no native magnolias. And as we know, as we've come to find out with pollinators and butterflies and native fauna, the native trees are really key to a healthy ecosystem. So I'd encourage you to consider a native tree. It may not be as showy, although I guess that's a matter of opinion. There are a number of different resources for native plants, native trees. We're at a disadvantage as far as native trees go, because a lot of them aren't suited to the public right-of-way placement. They're okay for parks, but there's so many limits and restrictions in the public right-of-way as far as a tree goes, that it's really tough to find a native to go there. But yeah, I mean, if you like the magnolia and want to go with the magnolia, just keep in mind the fact that most magnolias are pretty thirsty. They require a little bit more water. They are not native. They have a shallow root system. And otherwise, you said a tulip magnolia. I think you're talking about Magnolia solengiana, and beautiful plants in flower right now. In fact, there was somebody on the call who has the background of a Magnolia solengiana. Anyway, I hope that answered your question.
Great. Okay, so Phil asks, how many public trees are there in El Cerrito?
Well, it's about 10,000. I'm going to show you, or more or less, and that doesn't count the. It doesn't count the trees in the natural area. Excuse me while I just bumble a little bit. This is what happens when I'm trying to change screens. I'm going to share another screen with you, but I have to find it, and I will do that. Okay, I'm going to show you. Let's see. I am going to show you this. Let's see, where is it? Sorry, excuse me. I appreciate your patience. Let's see if this will do it. No, that's not going to do it. Okay, I appreciate your patience. Let me see if I can.
So this
Okay,
is,
here, go ahead.
I was just going to say, while you're trying to get that set up, I just put a link in the chat to Calscape, which, and I gave the link for our zip code, and it lists all the native trees and plants that are native to our particular area. And so Thad, that might be a place for you to look to see what, between that and maybe the city street tree, look for the California natives there, might give you some ideas.
So Phil, you're asking about how many trees. So on the city website, there's a page. If you do a search for the tree inventory, you'll come up with this page. And the tree inventory online tool is here. You can click it and you can go in to, we'll get first a portrait of the whole city. And it shows you there's about 10,000 trees. And it shows you the total yearly ecological benefits here, broken down in greenhouse gas benefits, water benefits, energy benefits, air quality benefits, property benefits. Let's not forget that a tree-lined street generally has a higher property value than a street without trees. So if you want to dig down into this, I'll just do a little example here at the corner of Everett and Stockton. I'm thinking, if I'm right, I might be wrong. Or not, okay, we're going to see what is this tree here? Well, it's a vacant site, so we're missing a tree there. You see this vacant site here? The tree across the street, it looks like another vacant site. We have too many of those, folks. Now here is a water gum. So this shows you, and let's see, can I move this? It gives you a little bit of information on the tree. It tells you how big it is and what the species is. Does that answer your question, Phil?
I think 10,235 is a good number. I see that right on the website. Okay, let me give you Claire's question. Really interesting. She says, she has a question about trees that have died of old age. If you root a cutting from that old tree, will the new little tree, will it start a brand new lifespan, or will it be the lifespan of the old tree? I'm not sure I phrased that correctly, but it's so interesting.
Right. Well, that's a great question. I think really vegetative cuttings or asexual reproduction or cloning, plants have been cloned for forever. And we don't think twice about cloning plants, and it's fine. They'll live plenty long. The new plant. In fact, there's an effort. I believe it's called Archangel Tree, where there's a group of people who are making vegetative cuttings on ancient trees, and they're reproducing them. These are clones of these ancient trees, and they're reproducing them and growing them on to keep the stock fresh, and to an individual tree will age, but a young clone or a young cutting, will be the age of that individual cutting. I suppose. I have a plant at home that I took a cutting of when I worked in a botanical gardens in the late 1970s. And that plant, that was a Victorian glass house I worked in. I bet you that plant, if I think of it this, in the way that you phrased your question, I bet that plant is over 150 years old. But it's just a small plant. It is its own individual. And I'm sorry I'm not being very scientific about this explanation, but I hope it answers your question.
I think that's great. Beatrice has a question about El Cerrito's dinosaur forest on the Ohlone Greenway, which I have to say, I don't even know what that is. So she says, does anyone know when it was planted and if anyone is maintaining it? And I would like to say, where is it? I don't even know what that is.
Sure. Interesting thing about the Ohlone Greenway. The Ohlone Greenway was the old railroad bed before BART built their raised tracks. And as the story goes, we have one of our former Urban Forest Committee members was a founding forester, if you will, in El Cerrito, Steve Price. And Steve Price, along with a few other volunteers, managed to plant over 800 trees along the Ohlone Greenway, where what had previously been maintained as a with herbicides and just it was a barren area. Steve and his volunteer cohort planted 800 trees. And some of the trees that they planted there, one of their ideas was somebody had the idea to plant the dinosaur forest. So what it is it's a group of so-called prehistoric trees. However, it hasn't been really maintained that way. We probably should have put some magnolias and some tree ferns and other species, ancient species. There are ginkgo, and there's Arcariana, monkey puzzle tree, and there's some other conifers that are in there. And it would be nice to build upon that. It generally, though, I think it was more of a whim that the dinosaur forest was developed, and there are certainly some anomalies to the prehistoric plantings that are there. If somebody wanted to volunteer to take that area on and adopt it, I think the city would be very supportive. But with our current situation as far as our resources and capacity goes, I don't see us developing the dinosaur forest.
Yeah. Well, maybe a school could take it on because the kids would love anything about dinosaurs. So I know there are a few teachers listening today, so maybe they will think of that as a good project. I only have 2 more questions unless people are going to start typing more questions into the chat. So one is from Louise, who is interested in how does one find an arborist and how to check if they're certified. So for example, does the ISA have a listing of local arborists? If somebody wanted to hire someone, that wasn't you, Stephen.
Well, that's a great question. There's a lot of people who are members of the International Society of Arboriculture, but frankly, that's not good enough. This website, let's see. Can you see that? Find an arborist?
Not yet. Yes. Oh,
You see
good.
it?
Yeah.
Okay. Trees are good. This is the International Society of Arboriculture. And you can either verify somebody's credential here, or you can find an arborist. So there I am. But you could broaden it. You could broaden it to a larger geographic area, including the Bahamas or Bahrain if you want. But this is a great website, and I'll give you a list of it's actually a really good website. Here's, information for tree owners, the benefits of trees, choosing the right tree,
And there's,
managing tree hazards and risks. This website is Trees Are Good. Pretty easy to remember, right?
And I
Fine.
just typed it into the chat.
Okay.
Awesome. That looks like it's going to be fun to spend some time on there. Paul wonders if you have any suggestions for plants that would be good on a hillside to stop hillside erosion, and he specifies non-tree plants.
Well, there are a lot of herbaceous plants that I don't know, so I can think of a lot of herbaceous plant seed mixes that are native erosion control mixes. There's a company in, well, they were in Gilroy. It's called Pacific Coast Seed Company. And you can find their products in a lot of good garden stores. And again, please, I don't really have anything against the big boxes, except that they're taking money away from your local specialist. And some of the nurseries that have been around for years, including East Bay Nursery and Berkeley Hort, and there are some local, really wonderful native plant nurseries, including the Watershed Nursery in Richmond and Oaktown Nursery in Berkeley. They all four of those, well, I'm not sure about I'm not sure about the native plant nurseries, whether they sell seed, but I do know that East Bay Nursery in Berkeley on San Pablo Avenue and Berkeley Horticultural Nursery on McGee, I think. They all sell native erosion control, and Pacific Coast Seed Company makes an erosion control mix. There's a lot of shrubs that you could put on, ceanothus is a wonderful native plant. The bees, the pollinators just love it. And it's so brilliantly blue, generally blue or purple flowers. There are a lot of just endless resources as far as erosion control. But if you're looking for a quick something that you don't have a chance to wait for a shrub to be established, I'd recommend a good erosion control mix, a native erosion control mix. Again, Pacific Coast Seed carries that, and these other two nurseries, Pacific Hort and Berkeley Hort and East Bay Nursery would carry those. And then start looking at, talk to your local native plant nursery and talk to them about a slope, and they can help you decide on the right height, the plant that you want, the right height. Baccharis, lots of native species that would work out to hold the slope and not be a tree.
Good, excellent. Okay, and Thad wonders again if you have a native tree suggestion that flowers but doesn't have fruit. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Stephen, but I think flowers are always followed by some kind of fruit. So, but it may not be a fruit that a rat would be interested in, like an arbutus or something would be a tiny little fruit, right?
Yeah, so you're right. Most every plant that flowers has a fruit. Here's another great resource. Hopefully you can see Select Tree, a tree selection guide.
Mm-hmm.
Is that up on your screen?
Yes.
So this is great. If you want to search a tree by the characteristics, here's your height. the growth rate, shape, habit, bark color, bark texture, fruit, leaf and flower characteristics. This is a Cal Poly, really wonderful website. I use this all the time. It's a really great resource, and it can help you find that. Again, you said a native tree that has very little fruit. Well, if you like acorns, you know, there's some smaller acorns. I don't know. I'm a big local oak fan. I also like the California buckeye. You know, there's the you know what's a great fruit bearing plant that I don't think that the rats would like, but the birds would just be all over your place. And if you wanted to, you could make wine out of it. Is the elderberry. You know, the local elderberry is a beautiful, small little fruit. Not, you know, it's not a fleshy fruit. It doesn't, you know, degrade and create a mess. But it's small and kind of hard. And the elderberries can be, you know, the birds, if you can get to them before the birds do, you're lucky. But if you want to attract wildlife, that's another great plant to have. As well as, I would say that one of my favorites, one of my personal favorites as far as attracting birds and no mess fruit and no rats. And I got you on that. I think I have all of your your desires there. Not what not to attract is the toyon. You know, the toyon is a very special plant with the red flower, red fruit. So I'm just going to pull up a photo of that from the Select Tree website. And this is you know, this is just a wonderful plant. It can be kind of a smallish tree, or you can keep it fairly low, but it has these great berries that you know, the cedar waxwings will go all over this.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so Bonnie is hoping that you can
Hi,
go
Bonnie.
back that you can go back to the plant database and talk about who works on it and how people can add their own street tree or make changes to the database if necessary.
Well, that's a great question. You can't make a change to it. That's the easiest answer. Only the city can make a change to it. And let's see, where'd that go? Let's see. So only the city can make a change to that database. I don't know what you're seeing right now. I'm sorry. I guess you're seeing the right of way. Excuse me. Here we go. That's what we're looking for. So what happened was when we received the grant, when the city received the grant in 2013 to create this tree inventory, one of the criteria that we had was for the public to be able to view it just like we're viewing it now, so that you could just go on your street and you know, find out what are those trees on my street, or you could, you know, what is a tree on you know, in front of 1165 Shevlin. We wanted that, and we had several contractors who bid to give us the tree inventory, and Davy was the only one that had this public window on it that they would allow us to put on the website. Unfortunately, they're not doing our street tree work. So until the company that's doing our street tree work can update the Davy, which I expect will happen this year, a lot of this information, unfortunately, is actually 8 years old. So it does need to be updated. But you can't do it. Sorry.
Awesome. Well, it's a fantastic database. It's just great. Louise wonders, what is the best time of year to call an arborist? Yeah, so it depends what you need, I guess.
I was just going to say, it depends on what you want to call him or her. Which, by the way, there's a great, as is going on everywhere for good reason, there's a serious effort by the International Society of Arboriculture and California Urban Forest Council and others to diversify and the workforce. And so we have a lot of really expert women and people of color who are joining the workforce and becoming certified arborists and climbing and doing all kinds of great work. When you need, I think that really when you can call them is the best time, and they'll tell you, because it's best if we can avoid pruning during the nesting season, and certain species are more, the bird nesting season is what I mean to say. Certain species are more seasonally tolerant of pruning than others. I think of Japanese maple, for example, sometimes loses a lot of fluids when they're pruned if it's too late in the spring. So I just say find an arborist and call them. And I always recommend talking to at least 3 contractors, no matter what you're doing, so that you get a good, you have a sense of how well that person communicates with you. Not to mention the fact that, just because they're a certified arborist doesn't mean that their prices aren't going to be different from one another. So you just get a good fit by talking with, at least 3.
Great. So we're wondering, what are the best trees you recommend for fall color?
Ooh, well, the best.
Your favorites.
Oh gosh. Well, I have to say, to quote my first ornamental horticulture teacher, go with ginkgo. You can't go wrong with ginkgo. Now, the ginkgo, however, is not, am I sharing? Let's see, I don't know what I'm sharing. Okay.
You have the tree keeper up.
Okay, good. Okay. So I'm going to open up let's see, here we go. Let's see, what am I sharing? Sorry, forgive me. You can tell I'm not really a professional here with the screen sharing. Here we go. Okay, so this is a crepe myrtle, and crepe myrtle actually have some pretty good color. Some of them, look at that. That's dramatic. Others that I like are this is a Chinese pistache. This is a great street tree. This was voted to be the most trouble-free, reliable street tree in the Bay Area. Now, why don't we plant, why don't we just fill all the streets with a particular species? Well, the problem with that is that's what happened years ago with the elms, the American elm trees. All the elms had, the streets were lined, especially in the Midwest, were planted with elm trees. And when you have a monoculture, whatever pest moves in has a heyday and really seriously depletes the, can really kill the whole forest, the whole urban forest. That's why we diversify. So the kind of the general rule in urban horticulture, urban forestry rather, is you don't want any more than 10% of the same in your inventory, 10% of the same species, 20% of the same genus, and 30% of the same family. And that's a real challenge. So we're always looking for new trees. This is the ginkgo. Not actually, this isn't really super bright, but I mean, maybe another week later, and this would have been even more yellow, is what I meant to say by super bright. But the ginkgo, the nice thing about the ginkgo is those leaves really hold on for a long time. But then again, they like a little bit of water. This is the, they're not as drought tolerant. And this is another not as drought tolerant tree. This is the red maple. This is one of the cultivars, probably either Autumn Blaze or Autumn Glory, one of those. There's a number of different cultivars, which, by the way, cultivar, what's a cultivar? So we have, this kind of goes back to Claire's question about the clones or the cuttings, the vegetative cuttings. Sometimes cultivars, and I hope I get this right, a cultivar is just a plant that's been developed because it maintains a certain trait. And so cultivars are named, people name them different things, like Autumn Blaze, for example, with this maple. This is a red maple, Autumn Blaze. And they name them because they are reliably bright red in the fall. By the way, the city of El Cerrito has several of the red maple along San Pablo Avenue. Perhaps you've noticed those, particularly around the Schmidt at on San Pablo Avenue, and then south between Eureka and Lincoln. There's a number of them.
Yeah, those red maples on San Pablo are a stunning sight. If you're driving down Mosier, there's just this amazing river of red down there, and I'm glad to know what those were. That's really nice. So just one more question that I've had come in, and I don't know if anyone else has any more as we're winding up a little bit, is what again, with the natives, what native varieties could we really encourage the city to plant more of to help the native insect population, which we know are, evolved to depend on those native plants, those native trees. And so do you have some favorites of those, Stephen, or some ideas about that?
There are some challenges with climate change, and as far as trees, what the best tree for the future is. There have been studies done through University of California where they are predicting the trees that are now perform well in the South. They're trying to find cities like Berkeley, I believe, was equated with not Burbank, but Fresno, possibly. And I'm sorry, I shouldn't probably say, because, but they're pairing up these cities with what they expect the climate will be like, and they've taken the trees that are doing well in those cities that are further south, that they expect a city like El Cerrito to have that similar climate in the future. They're taking the trees species from that and applying it to El Cerrito, for example. We, with our centennial tree, El Cerrito turned 100 in 2017. With our centennial tree, we selected a valley oak, which is a large, substantial tree, which isn't necessarily, I mean, it's native, but it's more native inland. We're hoping that tree really gets established and does well. It's a tough call to know what does. I have planted, the city has planted several of the Oregon oak, the Quercus garryana, or Oregon white oak is also called. We wonder though, if it's, with that climate model that I was just describing, we wonder if that will, how long that will go on into the future if we end up with hotter temperatures and drier, drier winters. Yeah, so street trees, if we had a really broad area, the California buckeye might be a good one. Most of these, I think the natives we're really trying to get those into parks. We've planted a lot of coast live oak and a lot of buckeye and some madrone and some of the elderberry in the parks because those seem to be the best environment for the native trees. The street trees, it's just such a tough environment. We take these trees that have really been developed. We've been planting a lot of trees from the Mideast because of the tough capacity, their tolerance for these harsh conditions. Excuse me.
Yeah. Well, and Robin mentions Western redbud.
Yeah, Western redbud, it needs to be trained as a tree. So Western redbud wants to be a shrub. So the trouble with the Eastern redbud is more of a tree. It's more upright. Western redbud, it tends to be in the natural environment, tends to be multi-stemmed and more shrubby.
But it can be trained.
Yes, it can.
Into a tree. Oh, that's nice.
Yep.
And blue blossom ceanothus, which I also think of as a shrub, but maybe
I do too. I think of that as a shrub also.
Yeah, but very nice. That is all the questions I've had come in. I don't know if anyone has any last minute questions or comments. Quite a few people have been putting in the chat that they have enjoyed this event, and thank you so much to Stephen for your knowledge and your terrific recommendations. And thank you for emphasizing natives. Anything further? I think the questions seem to have finished. So
okay. If anybody's interested in just a little bit of tutorial on correct pruning around your yard on trees,
yes.
I could give a very brief little slideshow that way.
Awesome.
Yes, please.
Since we still have about 10 minutes or a little more.
Love it.
Okay. All right. So we have our objectives, which are to reduce the risk of failure, to provide clearance. Sometimes we prune for health. Sometimes we increase the lifespan of a tree by pruning, and we improve the aesthetics, and we influence flower and fruit production. You know, I think that clearance is probably the most common reason to prune. This is an illustration from a Alex Shigo book. It's almost cartoony with how extreme it is as far as its, you know, kind of, it's like a caricature of why to prune. But it does show you some basic ideas. And gives you some sense of, well, you know, has anybody heard the term codominant stems, right? So these codominant stems, when we look for the structure of a tree, we look for a main central leader. The definition of a tree is an upright, generally single leader plant with a canopy. And where we run into problems with trees is when they develop these codominant stems. This becomes a failure point pretty frequently, particularly if it's got included bark. That's when the bark rolls in and pushes the two limbs apart from one another. The dead branches, et cetera, are pretty easily understood. Everybody gets that. Water sprouts can be a sign of stress on trees. Suckers can be a sign of stress on trees. So when we do make a cut, it's key, particularly with a heavier or a wider diameter branch, that we do a compound cut. Our first cut is an undercut. Our second cut is from the top. And that creates a kind of a hinge so that this area near the branch collar does not peel away from, it doesn't peel the bark off the tree. So if you were to go through with this, this branch falls off at 1 and 2 here, or at least you can hear it break. And then there's no pressure on 3. It's imperative that in order for a tree to heal, after losing a limb, after a limb has been pruned, it requires this branch tissue that will close the wound. I think you've all seen a flush cut, or on one hand, and on another hand, you've seen an old wound that's really closed over. You can see that tissue has really closed that open wound, preventing decay and harm from entering the inside of the tree. So you can see the correct way of cutting here. Outside of this bark collar, you're leaving a little bit of a stub here. This is what you end up with. This is the branch bark ridge. Here's the cut. This would be a flush cut, which is really harmful to a tree. It takes the branch protection zone and exposes the tree wound to pathogens and decay. The correct cut leaves this ridge, which is able, you see in this photo, this tissue has completely closed over this old wound. So this is the new cut, and it's cut in such a way that allows this tissue to close the wound, which helps prevent decay. Ed Gilman out of the University of Florida, who is really just a tremendous mentor and teacher, and has written a number of really great books, including this illustrated guide to pruning. He says that there may be no practice that is more damaging to trees than the use of flush cuts to remove branches. That's it. Okay. Any questions about pruning? Okay. Well, we didn't plant a tree this year, although we may yet be planting a tree, right, Claire? Claire runs a school garden with some kids over at Fairmount School, and we may get a tree in this week.
They're very, very excited about it. And a lot of them, when I mentioned Arbor Week coming in, said, oh, I remember last year and that guy came and we read a thing and we planted the tree, and they got a big kick out of it. So they're looking forward to it again.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to be in this place of everybody distanced. I can see, I mean, for me, that's really the highlight every year is planting with the kids. And we had such a great history at Cerrito Vista Park and other places. We've kept this up. Well, Bonnie, the first Arbor Day that I did here when I was, since being with the city, was with Bonnie McKenzie and the El Cerrito Garden Club in that first photograph that you showed, Martha. But subsequent years have been with other school kids, and the last year was with Claire's group. And of course, this week we'll also have the Tree City USA flag flying from the City Hall flagpole, which is exciting. So, but there's nothing like getting a tree in the ground for the future.
What tree are you going to plant at the Fairmont School?
We haven't gotten there yet.
Ah.
I have a comment about, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I have a comment about the cloning business. As one, this is Jan Linhart, I'm a member of the El Cerrito Forest Committee. And as one who spent some years cloning trees, I can vouch for the fact that clones of trees can live as long as the parent tree. If cloning a tree, I would recommend that you collect a branch or a cutting that has no flowers or fruits on it, because that detracts from the energy that the cutting should be doing in terms of putting in that energy into roots. But yes, clones can live for nice long lives and will tend to look like the parent tree. Thank you.
Great.
I have a question. I have a question for Stephen.
Go right ahead.
I have a problem. My sidewalk is rising, and I had some 20, 30 years ago, my neighbor had a Monterey pine, and he cut it down because it got sick. And after he cut it down, the sidewalk started to rise some more. And I talked to some arborists, and they said, no, that's not possible. But I could see that it was rising more. And so what can I do about that?
It's a city sidewalk.
Yes, all sidewalks are city.
Well, most sidewalks are, you're right. You can call maintenance, the maintenance division, and we can come out and look at it. If it's due to a city tree, the city patches the sidewalk. So
I would like the neighbor to pay for it.
well,
He already paid once.
uh-huh.
When his roots went into my sewer line. And so this is the same area of the sewer that goes further into the sidewalk.
I'm not sure I know how to advise you on that. That's a civil matter between you and your neighbor. Now, if it is a city sidewalk though, and it's a trip hazard, the city often patches the trip hazard, particularly if it's due to a city street tree.
But I want the city tree person, to be able to say to that neighbor, yes, this is your roots.
That's an unusual circumstance. If you would like to pursue that,
Yes,
please call the maintenance division and ask for that.
okay.
Either call or send an email.
So Vera, was the tree that caused the sidewalk, was that a city street tree, or was it a personal, a tree that was on the person's property that wasn't a street tree?
Yeah, it was on the person's property.
Yeah, so that's
Up
a
the
different
hill,
issue.
up the hill.
Yeah, got it. Yep.
But I just want the city to say, yes, this is his route.
Yeah.
Even with a city tree, we can't say with any certainty that a route, unless the sidewalk is removed
Well,
And
there
we
are
can
no other trees.
and we can see the route, we can't
Yeah.
say with certainty that that is what's causing it
Well,
without removing the sidewalk and looking at seeing the evidence.
yeah,
But if you want us to take a closer look,
yes.
please contact the maintenance division.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I think that about brings us to the end.
Thank you so much.
Unless there are any further comments or questions, I would just, I am so partial to that poem that I would like to read it again.
Please.
Do you want to bring up your screen?
Oh, no, we'll just listen to you.
Okay. Gold green. Let it be on a day in March, California, when the grass is green on the rolling hills and the snow is deep in the mountains. Let it be on a day like this that we plant a tree, California, for the years to come, for the little ones, and the lakes will be pure in the mountains. Let it be gold and green, California, that we touch the ground, that we heal the land from the mountains to the sea.
Thank you, Stephen. That's great.
Thank you, everyone, for your attention, your time, your interest.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for all that information and for all the good work you do. We really appreciate it. And makes me want to wish I lived in El Cerrito. But thank you very much. So again, Robin will be sending out to everyone who registered for today. Robin will be sending out all the different resources that she's been taking notes about. Thank you so much for doing that, Robin. Really appreciate that. And I guess I'm the hostess, so I guess I'll say thank you, everybody, and happy Arbor Week. And the El Cerrito Library has a wonderful list of books for children about trees that you should all be looking at for yourselves or your grandchildren or neighbors. And more trees, the more trees, the better, right, Stephen?
Yeah.
So the
Trees
fabulous,
for the future.
the Judi Dench movie that we were recommending, in that we found out that there are more trees on Earth than there are stars in the Milky Way, which blew my mind.
Wow.
So that seemed impossible, but I know we need more of them. So thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Martha.
Thank
Thank you,
you
Mary.
all.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye. Happy Arbor Week.
Happy Arbor Week.